So imagine the drama of a theater troupe. You've got the lead actor, always the star of the show, but there's also the ambitious understudy, a bit tired of waiting in the wings, pushing to take center stage. There's the swing performer, the kind who can play multiple roles depending on what's needed at any given time. And there's the veteran actor, once a lead, maybe now struggling for relevance, keen to show they still belong. Now, take all of that and let's stick in some recognizable faces. The lead, that's Trump and the US. The understudy, Xi Jinping of China, head of the world's second largest economy. The swing, that's India, right? Narendra Modi, working the room, figuring out where his country fits. Is it with the US or with China? And the veteran, Vladimir Putin, isolated from much of the world, but looking for allies. Now, this is simplistic, and the analogy leaves a lot out. I get that. But it becomes more interesting once you realize how all these stories converged recently. Not on some theater stage, but on the world stage, at a summit in China, where President Xi was the star of the show, surrounded by an ensemble cast.
Leaders of three of the world's largest countries happily rubbing shoulders at a summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization in Tianjin, China.
In all, it was actually more than 20 world leaders attending that summit, representing a swath of key economies from across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. But consider the small details. Watch India's prime minister and Russia's president holding hands. The angle's so quick, it's easy to miss. They head straight for China's president, shaking hands, forming a tight circle, smiling, laughing. Then they're taking photos in limousines. Modi's posting on X. Always a delight to meet President Putin. Putin's calling Modi a dear friend. And Xi Jinping is presiding over it all. His opening remarks filled with the kind of coded slights China often uses to refer to the United States.
但冷战思维、霸权主义、保护主义阴霾不散。
This is a confrontation between global coalitions that stand against the liberal democratic order, that see the United States as the hegemon that needed to be resisted.
We can best understand what's happening here as each of these countries feeling both a push and a pull, starting with India, caught between two massive centers of gravity. For years, India, industrializing, has very much wanted and needed a relationship with the United States. Think back to 2019, during Trump's first term. This was in Houston, Texas, among the largest receptions of a foreign leader in US history, I think, certainly in the 21st century.
This is extraordinary. This is unprecedented.
A whole stadium, more than 50,000 people at this mega event they called Howdy Modi. And then the following year, Trump returns the favor, heads to India for a Namaste Trump event that pulls in even more people.
Namaste. Namaste.
What both leaders understood is that each country was leaning more and more heavily on the other over time. Here's India's exports to the United States. The last 30 years, a pretty clear upward trend that really spikes in a big way the closer you get to today. All this made the US India's single biggest customer. And the US sees value in India too. The two countries are defense partners, part of the Quad alliance, which is made up of the United States, India, Japan, and Australia, meant as a kind of barricade against Chinese influence in that part of the world, the Indo-Pacific, which makes a more important point here, that both India and the United States see China as a threat.
So India is in many ways the services center of the world, but for manufacturing, it has been in the past lagging behind China. There have been efforts to change that.
There have been many advances in AI, artificial intelligence. At the same time, there have been even more momentous development in another AI, America and India.
But then, so much progress undone with a very public humiliation.
Another country is feeling the impacts of the U.S. president's ongoing trade war, and that is India, where a staggering 50% tariff is now in effect.
Trump's 50% tariff on Indian goods is among the highest the U.S. has implemented worldwide. And it's important to know that tariff is made up of two equally damaging parts. The first is a 25% so-called reciprocal tariff that Trump has imposed on countries based on trade deficits. This hurts because India's explosive economic growth relies on selling what it makes.
One of the primary goals for India in the last 15 years has been to develop its industrial base.
But tariffs from the US, from India's largest export partner, that drastically undercut that effort.
Exporter Shamim Azad says the effect has already been devastating.
This will have a major impact with a number of sectors that are going to be particularly hard hit.
So our labor-intensive sectors, especially textiles, footwear, apparel, are going to be badly hit.
And that's just one half of Trump's tariffs on India. The other half, an additional 25%, is punishment for buying Russian oil.
Now, what's wrong with that picture? Well, it fuels the Russian war machine. India's nothing but a laundromat for the Kremlin.
And Trump himself would write on Truth Social, "I don't care what India does with Russia. They can take their dead economies down together for all I care."
There's a strong case to argue that the United States taking punitive measures against India instead of against the supposed target, Russia, has actually pushed India and Russia closer together.
So you get a scene like we saw in Tianjin, Modi holding Putin's hand, or is it the other way around? Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has added a great deal of complexity to its standing on the world stage.
Russia's standing on the global stage is not great. It is definitely not the great power of Soviet times, of Cold War era times.
The war in Ukraine has dragged on now for well over 3 years. And though Trump himself has often appeared warm to Putin, he even received a birthday call from him, apparently, that relationship has also often gone cold, especially when Trump has tried to broker a ceasefire, which sometimes goes nowhere or goes ignored.
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. When then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city, and after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything.
And over the span of 2 U.S. administrations now, Russia has faced crippling international sanctions, more than any other country on earth. Travel restrictions on Russia's elite, billions in foreign assets frozen, trade blockades on Russian goods, especially oil. Entire ships have been impounded.
German customs authorities have seized the Panama flag tanker Eventin.
Germany says this vessel was sailing from Russia to Egypt with almost 100,000 tons of oil on board.
And while Russia has been able to leverage the immense economic horsepower of a country at war, it is also a country nursing wounds.
There's no doubt that the sanctions from the United States and the rest of the West are a severe problem for Russia. If that weren't the case, they wouldn't put so much effort into trying to get them repealed.
So you get a sense of how the U.S. has pushed Russia to find new friends. But the pull of China and India in particular comes down to oil.
Putin has committed energy suicide in Europe. It's basically completely blown up his own markets for Russian energy in Europe. Russia now needs to sell its oil somewhere else.
Russia is the world's second largest exporter of crude oil, next to Saudi Arabia. And just looking at July data alone, the blue bars, that's crude, easily its most important energy export. And its 2 largest buyers, China and India, and it's not even close.
China and India are among the most important. India because it is propping up the Russian economy with its energy purchases. China because it's supplying technology to fuel Russia's defense industry and its war machine. Russia needs these 2 countries.
The message, of course, that Putin is trying to send is that he is not internationally isolated. I mean, Russia wants to project itself as a big power. It has failed to achieve its goals in already over 3.5 years in a smaller state. So it really is pining for some opportunity to show that it's actually stronger than it is, that it's a global player and has global allies. That's really the main goal here, to project more strength than Russia actually has.
In all of this, China sees opportunity, and it's not being shy about it. These are scenes from a military parade this week in Tiananmen Square, just a couple of days after the Shanghai Cooperation Summit. And this photo from that same day shows the leaders of China, Russia, and North Korea side by side. China sees a world order carefully crafted over the course of nearly the last century by the United States, but being undermined by its current president.
Reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world. Reciprocal. That means they do it to us and we do it to them.
And Xi Jinping believes China can become what the United States used to be.
推动世界多极化和国际关系民主化的中流砥柱。
Through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, China has sought to develop its presence globally. And the challenge, of course, is that as the US has adopted this focus and priority over bilateral trade and has perhaps taken a back seat from multilateralism, China is trying to fill that void very quickly.
Trying, yes, but it's more than that. China's Belt and Road Initiative may be a work in progress, but the goal of this plan is to physically connect the infrastructure of its members. Railroads, oil and gas pipelines, ports, building bridges, really.
They have utilized the Belt Road Initiative as an outlet to develop ties from political, economic, social, and even cultural dynamics.
And so you have meetings like the one we saw in Tianjin over the weekend. By population, the countries involved represent the single largest regional grouping on the planet.
It's a substantial body of opinion from not just the original Far East and Central Asian region, but also much further afield, all of which sees the United States and the West and the liberal democratic order as a problem.
And China showing it can convene such leaders. That, experts say, is very much intended to send a message.
The main message is that the Trump administration is weak. It has shown its inability to pressure Russia into coming to the negotiating table and actually making any concessions. And it has tried to bully India and China through tariffs, but hasn't necessarily followed through with strength.
It should be said, messages are distinct from reality, right? There is nothing easy or straightforward about a three-way relationship between China, India, and Russia. There are deep rivalries and conflicts between them. But for now, that may be besides the point.
Trump's efforts to navigate the world in this new America that he imagines are just pushing Trump's enemies closer together. All of this, of course, will create a world that is more difficult for the United States to be prosperous.
For his part, Donald Trump sees this threat and has already accused China of conspiring with other world leaders against the US. So everyone understands what's happening here. The biggest question then becomes what everyone does next.